Good evening, guys. In today's session, we are going to understand Spring Batch concept. We are going to discuss what is Spring Batch, what is the purpose of going for Spring Batch, and how to develop our application by using Spring Batch framework. Perfect. Let's try to understand what is Spring Batch. Batch is used to perform operation on bulk of records. Batch is used to process bulk operation. Batch is used to process bulk operation. What is bulk operation? For example, sending monthly salary to all employees. Monthly salary to all employees. It's not one employee in a company. Multiple employees will be available. Sending the salary to all the employees is called as one batch operation. And the second one, sending greetings message to all customers. So in our company, we are working on the projects for several customers. For all the customers, I want to send one festival greeting message that comes under bulk operation. Sending bank statements to all account holders. If you take an example of SBI Bank having a lot of account holders, and they will be using SBI Bank account to perform several transactions, right? At the month end, we need to send bank statement to all the account holders. So we need to get the transaction history of every account. We need to keep that in a PDF, and we need to send that PDF document to account holders in the email. That is called one batch operation, right? Batch is used for processing bulk operation. Batch is used to process bulk operation. What is the meaning of bulk operation? Doing the same operation for multiple records is called as bulk operation. What are some common use cases of batch operation? Sending monthly salary to all employees comes under bulk operation. Sending greetings message to all the customers comes under bulk operation. Sending bank statements to all the account holders comes under bulk operation. Sending credit card bill statement to account holders. Sending reminders for pending invoices. Sending reminder message for pending invoice. All these things comes under bulk operation. So in the real time, when we are developing the project, our project needs to perform bulk operation. So to perform that bulk operation, we are going to use Spring Batch. So what is this Spring Batch? Spring Batch is a framework. What is this Spring Batch? Spring Batch is a framework. Spring Batch is a framework that is designed to develop robust batch applications. So what is the batch application that we got the clarity now? Batch application, nothing but which is used to perform bulk operation. So if you want to perform any bulk operation in your application, maybe your application sending salary to all the employees, or your application sending greeting message to all the customers, or your application sending bank statement to all the account holders, or your application is sending credit card bill statement to all the account holders, or sending reminder message for pending invoices. So if you have such a kind of requirement to implement, then you need to go for Spring Batch concept. Spring Batch is a framework that is used to develop robust batch applications. By using Spring Batch, we can process millions of records. In fraction of seconds. By using Spring Batch, we can process millions of records in fraction of seconds. So now let us take some example. Here I am having data dump read read CSV data and store into database. Store into database. Or another requirement, export DB table data into CSV file. So these are some common use cases that we are going to see in the real project development. I'm having my customers' data in the database, or I am having some records in the database. I want to develop one application which will read the data from the database table and which will export the data into CSV file. Export database table data into CSV file. That is one requirement. Second one is read the CSV data and store into database table. That will be another requirement. So here in the CSV, we may have millions of records. I want to read all the records from the CSV file and I want to store those records into database table. So can I consider reading the data from the CSV and storing into database table? Can we consider that as one batch operation? Yes, we can consider that as one batch operation. So in order to implement such kind of batch operations in the Spring framework, we have a concept called Spring Batch. What is this Spring Batch? Spring Batch is a framework that is designed to develop robust batch applications. By using Spring Batch, we can process millions of records in fraction of seconds. You can send monthly salaries, you can send greeting messages, you can generate bank statements, you can generate credit card bill statement, you can send reminder messages for pending invoices. Are you guys clear? What is the Spring Batch and why we need to go for Spring Batch? Spring Batch is a framework that is designed to develop robust batch applications. By using this Spring Batch, we can process millions of records in fraction of seconds. Here, I'm going to develop one application that will read the data from the CSV file and that will write the data into database table. So in the same way, you can develop the operation according to your project requirement. So today, we are going to develop one Spring Batch application. In that batch application, I will write the logic to read the data from the CSV file and store that data into database table. So let me show you my CSV file here. I'm having a file with a name called customers.csv. In this customers.csv file, I'm having customer records. So a lot of records are available here. I'm taking 1000 customer records. Customer ID, name, first name, last name, email, gender, contact number, country, date of birth. Like that, I'm having the data in the CSV file. So this file contains 1000 records. I want to read all the 1000 records and I want to store that data into database table. So here CSV file is available. Customers CSV file. Customer CSV file is available. I want to develop one application. Customer CSV file is available. I want to develop one application. So this is my Spring Batch application. Spring Batch application. This Spring Batch application is responsible to read the data from the CSV and write the data into database table. So today we are having 1000 records in the CSV. Tomorrow it may go to 10,000. It may go to 1 lakh or it may go to 10 lakhs also. So like this, I want to read the data from the file and I want to write the data into database. So here in the CSV file, multiple records can be available. So reading the data from the CSV and writing the data into database, we can consider that as one batch operation. So in order to perform that batch operation, we are having Spring Batch concept. What is this Spring Batch? It is a framework in the Spring. It is a framework or it is a module in the Spring framework that is used to develop robust batch applications. So the main purpose of Spring Batch is used to develop the application which can process millions of records in fraction of seconds. Are you guys clear? What is a Spring Batch and what is a batch application and what are some common use cases? What is batch application and what are some common use cases when we are going for batch operation? Come on, guys. Are you clear? What is batch? What is Spring Batch? What is batch? Are you able to understand? Come on, guys. Batch is used to develop robust batch application, which can process millions of records in the single shot. Okay, fine. Now let's understand Spring Batch terminology. So before going to develop any application by using Spring Batch, let us understand Spring Batch terminology. Spring Batch terminology. So to develop a Spring Batch application, we need to understand Spring Batch terminology. So first one, that is job launcher. We are going to create a job. In that, to launch that job, there is a concept called job launcher. So what is the purpose of job launcher in the Spring Batch? Whatever the batch application we are creating, so to launch that batch application, we will have a concept called job launcher. Job launcher is going to launch the job. That means what operation that we want to perform, that we are going to configure as a job. For the job, we are going to provide a step. For the job, we will provide a step. For the step, we are going to provide item reader. We will understand everything now. What is the components available? First, let's see the terminology of the Spring Batch. Item reader will be available. Then item processor will be available. Then item writer will be available. Then next one, job repository will be available. Job repository will be available. So when you are going to develop Spring Batch application, we need to understand batch terminology first. In the batch terminology, job launcher is available, job available, step available, item reader, item processor, item writer, and job repository. So here, if you observe our requirement, we want to read the data from the CSV file and we want to write into database. Now here, CSV is called as our source. Can I say this is our source? Guys, CSV, can I say it is a source? Database, can I say it is a destination? Source available and destination is available. In this, our application will be available, which will process the data and which will store the data in the destination. Source available, destination is available. We need to read the data from the source and we need to process the data and we need to store the data in the destination. Source, process, then destination. So here we are having a concept called item reader. What is the purpose of item reader? Item reader is used to read the data from the source, guys. Now you see, now item reader is available and item processor is available and item writer is available. So here, if you see first one, item reader. What is item reader? Item reader is used to read the data from the source. That means in our scenario, CSV file is our source. Item reader is a class in the Spring Batch that is used to read the data from the source. After reading the data, we need to apply some processing on the data. I want to do some filtering on the data. I want to do some filters, or I want to do some manipulations. I want to do some calculations. So here, once we got the data from the item reader, then we can use item processor and we can process that data. Once item processor processed that data, then we can write the data in the destination. To write the data in the destination, we are going to use item writer. Are you guys clear? What is item reader? What is item processor and item writer? Item reader, we are developing batch application. That means we need to process bulk operation. We need to perform operation on bulk of records. In our scenario, We are going to read the data from the CSV. Then we will store the data into database. To read the data from the source, item reader is available in the Spring Batch. To write the data to the destination, item writer is available in the Spring Batch. Between the reader and writing, between the reading and writing, we can do some processing on the data. For that, item processor is available. Item reader, item processor, and item writer. This item reader, item processor, item writer, we will give to step. So one step, read the data, process the data, write the data. That is called as one step. That step is configured with the job. So in one job, we can configure multiple steps. If you see job 1 to n. So if you see in the diagram, job 1, n steps. That means in one job, we can configure multiple steps. For every step, one reader, one processor, one writer will be available. So reader is used to read, item reader that is used to read the data from the source. Item processor that is used to process the data after reading. After processing is completed, item writer that is used to write the data to destination. Item reader, item processor, item writer will be configured with one step. One step will be configured with the job. That job will be started by job launcher. Job will be started by job launcher. The job launcher, job step, all the information will be maintained in the job repository. Job repository will maintain our job execution details. Job launcher is used to start our job execution. Job is going to start the step. Step will execute item reader, item processor, and item writer. If you want to develop the batch application by using Spring Boot, you need to have the clarity on this terminology. Job launcher, job, step, item reader, item processor, item writer, and job repository. Look at this diagram. Guys, are you able to understand what we are trying to do? We are trying to understand one module in the Spring, that is batch. Batch is used to process bulk operation. Our batch is used to perform bulk operation. What is a Spring batch? Batch. Batch is used to perform bulk operation. Batch is used to perform bulk operation. Sending monthly salaries, sending greetings, sending statements, sending messages, right? Reading the data from source to destination, reading the data and writing the data. All these things are comes under bulk operations. So if you have the requirement in the project to perform the bulk operation, then we will go for Spring Batch. So what is this Spring Batch? Spring Batch is a framework that is designed to develop robust batch applications. By using this Spring Batch, we can process millions of records in fraction of seconds, read the CSV data and store into database, export the DB table data and store into CSV file. Here, our requirement is read the data from the CSV file and write the data into database table. CSV is called as our source. Database is called as our destination. In order to develop this batch application, first we need to understand batch terminology. So what is our batch terminology? Anybody who want to work with the Spring Batch, they need to have the clarity on these 7 points. Job launcher, job, step, item reader, item processor, item writer, and job repository. Item reader is used to read the data from the source. Item processor is used to process the data. Item writer that is used to write the data. Reader, processor, writer we will give to the step. Reader, writer, processor will give to the step. One step will have one item reader, one item processor, one item writer. Step will configure to the job. One job can have multiple steps also. Okay. That job will be executed by job launcher. That job execution details will be maintained in the job repository. Are you clear? Are you guys clear with my point now? Are you guys clear with my point now? Shall we start the project development now? Theoretically, are you clear? What is a Spring Batch? Where we will use Spring Batch and Spring Batch terminology? Shall we start the development? Can we develop one application and can we see how the batch is going to execute? Yes? All right. So in order to develop the batch application, so let us see the steps that we are going to follow. Create starter project with these dependencies. Create Spring Starter project with the below dependencies: web starter, batch, batch dependency, data JPA, MySQL driver, and Lombok. We need to read the data from the CSV and we should write the data into database table. Let me open MySQL workbench. Okay, web starter, batch, data JPA, MySQL driver, and Lombok. Once it is done, configure data source properties in application.yml. With which database you want to connect, that database properties we need to configure in our YML file. Then whatever the file that we need to process, CSV file is available, right? So we need to read the data from the CSV file. We should write the data into database. That CSV file we are going to keep in the project resources folder. Keep the source file under resources folder. Then create one entity class and repository interface. These are used to communicate with the database. With which table you want to communicate, in which table you want to store your data, that we will specify using this entity class. This is the important part here. Create batch configuration class. Whatever we have seen in the diagram, job launcher, job, step, reader, processor, writer, all that stuff we are going to mention in the batch configuration class. So it is little tricky to develop this batch configuration class. So let's understand what to do that. Then next one, create one REST controller to launch the job. So we will have one REST controller. In the REST controller, we have a method. When we send the request to that method, then it is going to launch our job. Job launcher we are going to do by using that REST controller. Are you clear with the steps now? What are the steps that we need to follow to develop our batch application? Create Spring Starter project with below dependencies: web starter, batch dependency, data JPA, MySQL driver, Lombok. Good. Shall we start? Guys, shall we start the coding part? Yes. Now here, let me create one project, Spring Starter project. Let me take it as Spring Batch application. Spring Batch application. Click on next. Dependencies: DevTools, Web, Lombok, MySQL, Data JPA, Spring Data JPA. Then finally, I'm adding Spring Batch dependency. You see, Spring Batch. Batch application with the transactions, retry, skip, and chunk-based processing. Batch applications with the transactions and chunk-based processing will be available. Now, 3 plus 3, 6 dependencies. Lombok, web starter, batch, JPA, MySQL driver, DevTools. I have added DevTools dependency extra. All right. Click on next, click on finish. So with this, we are able to create one Spring Boot application with the batch dependency. Right. Yeah, perfect. Batch application got created. Let me change Java build path. All right. Go to pom.xml. Boot 2.7 version, Java 17 version, batch starter, JPA starter, web starter, dev tools, MySQL connector, Lombok, and test dependency. Perfect. So with this, our project is ready. So let me configure data source properties here. We need to configure our data source properties. So with which database we want to communicate, right? So here, data source properties we need to configure in our application. Data source URL, data source username, data source password that we need to configure. Let me take that from existing application. So data JPA applications will be available. From there, I can take our properties. So here, resources, application.yml file. Application.yml. So here we are configuring our data source properties. Good. Data source properties we have configured. Now, data source driver class name, password, URL, username, Hikari connection port. Go to the database. So let me select the database, create the new database, 29 SVMS, something like that. I will create a new database. Create database SBMS 29, something like this. Okay. Use the database. Use SBMS 29. I want to use this database. Okay. Show tables. Nothing will be available because just now we created this database. Let me configure this database in our data source properties. Along with these things, guys, so we are writing DDL auto as update, and we can configure show SQL, right? Format SQL. Like this, we can configure the properties. So JPA Hibernate DDL auto update spring.jpa.properties. Show SQL property we can configure, which is used to print queries on the console. Show SQL property we need to configure. That is available in spring.jpa.properties. Under properties, Hibernate will be available. Under Hibernate is already there. Under Hibernate, we are going to configure show underscore SQL as true. Okay. So here, show SQL as true. What is the meaning of that? Show SQL as true. JPA properties in that Hibernate, then show SQL to true we are configuring, which is used to print the code. Already it is there. Okay, no need to write it again. Already DDL auto update, show SQL true is available, which will print queries on the console. And here I'm going to write one more property, spring.batch.jdbc initialization schema. I want to provide always. Okay, that means if the tables are not available, then for the batch, the schema should be initialized. Batch related tables should be created automatically. Batch spring.batch.jdbc. Initialize the schema always. So whatever the schema that is required for our batch operation, that schema should be initialized always. That is one property that is extra we are configuring. Are you guys clear? Data source properties we configure. That is our first step is creating the project. Second step, configuring the properties in the application.yml. Then third step, keep this CSV file under resources folder. I have the CSV file here, customers.csv. Let me take that file. Let me keep in the project resources folder. Under resources, I'm keeping my customers.csv file. Refresh. That's it. Maven, update the project. Fine. Next one. We need to create entity class and repository interface, which is required to perform operation in the database. So entity class that will represent table. In which table we want to insert our data. So let me create one entity class here. We are already having Lombok for setters getters. Just let me create one entity class in the project. New class in.ashokid.entity. I'm taking the class with the name called customer. Click on finish. So in the CSV file, we are having several details of the customer. Let me take those details. Private integer, that is ID. Private string first name. Okay. Private string last name. Private string email. Private string email. Private string gender. Private string gender. Private string contact number. Private string contact number. Private string country. Private string date of birth. All this information we are getting from CSV. ID, first name, last name, email, gender, contact number, country, and date of birth. So let me represent this as a entity class. For that, I'm using @entity annotation. I'm using @entity annotation to represent this Java class as a entity class. One minute. @entity. Right? @table is optional. Then @entity, @data. Setters getters will come. I want constructor. So all args constructor. At the same time, no args constructor. If you want a table, then you can configure table also. If you want to map it to a different name, then so you can give table name. Table name is equal to customer_info. I want to map this data to a table called customer info. Here ID, that is a primary key. So let me map this as @ID. No need to generate the value automatically because in the CSV already customer ID is available. Just I want to represent that this is a primary key. I just want to represent that this is a primary key. And if you want to map it with a different column name, so you can go for @column. Name is equal to customer_ID. Customer_ID. This is a primary key. So do I need to explain anything in the entity class? Is there anything new? Guys, do I need to explain anything in the entity class? Not required. It is a simple Java class we created and we are mapping this class with the database table. For this class, we will create one interface, repository interface. New interface dot repository. Okay, that is customer repository. Customer repository that is extending the properties from JPA repository. Entity class is a customer. Primary key is ID, that is an integer. Perfect. So with this, we completed our fourth step also. Step 1, creating project, then configuring data source, then keeping the file, then creating the entity class and repository interface, then batch configuration. This is a little difficult, guys, how to create the batch configuration. Before moving to the batch configuration, are you clear with these steps? Boot application created, data source is configured, okay, entity class is created, repository interface is created, file also kept in the resources folder. Now we need to create batch configuration class. That is little difficult here. How to configure our batch? So whatever we have seen in the diagram, we need to represent that programmatically. So job launcher, job, step, reader, writer, all that stuff, processor, everything we need to represent as part of our configuration. So now here item reader is available. What I need to tell to the reader? Hey reader, read the data from the CSV. In the CSV, one row represents one customer data, and that row is having comma separated values. CSV nothing but comma separated values. I need to take the data from the CSV. I need to set to the entity class. Okay, that will be little challenging here. So here in the CSV, if you open that CSV, in that CSV, comma separated values available. This is the first row that contains the header part, and this is data row. One row represents one customer record, ID, name, first name, last name, email, gender, contact number, country, date of birth. The data is coming from the CSV. So whatever the data that is coming from the CSV, right? Item reader is responsible to read the data. Read the CSV, represent one row as one record. In one row, comma separated values available. Take the values. Don't read the first line. First line is the header. Second line onwards, data available. Take that data, set the data to entity class. That work we need to do in the item reader. Item processor. If you want to do any filter on the data, then you can go for item processor. Item writer. To write the data to the database, item writer will be available. So this thing we need to configure in our batch configuration. Okay. So let us see how we are going to do that configuration. Let me create one Java class, batch config. New class. I'm taking this class as batch config. Right? I'm keeping this in the config package. So this class I want to represent as a batch configuration class. I want to represent this class as a configuration class. For that, we are going for one annotation called @configuration. What is the purpose of @configuration? This class will be represented as a configuration class. This class will be represented as a configuration class. Okay, 1 minute, guys. Let me change the font. Yeah, so I'm taking one class that is public class batch config. This class is represented as a configuration class by using configuration annotation. In this class, we are going to enable batch processing. Let me go for enable batch processing. Enable batch processing. I want to perform batch processing in this application. Now, let me specify reader class. Okay, I want to develop item reader. What is the purpose of item reader? Item reader is responsible to read the data from the CSV. So I will specify item reader bean. I need item reader bean. Then I need item processor bean. Then I read item writer bean. I need item writer bean, item processor, item writer. Then I need step bean. Then I need job bean. All these things I need to configure in my batch configuration class. Item reader, which is customer reader in this application. It has to read the data from the CSV. Item processor, it is used to perform some operations on the data. Item writer, it is used to write the data to database table. Step represents reader, processor, and writer. That step will be represented by job. Job will be executed by job launcher. Okay, so let's start our coding part. Guys, observe carefully. This is little confusing for first time. Item reader bean. I want to read the data from the CSV file. So for that, there is a predefined class available that is called flat file reader. I want to read the data from the CSV. I want to read the data from the CSV. CSV is called as a flat file. Now, public flat file item reader. So I want to read the data and I want to represent that as a customer object. Customer reader bean I'm creating. Public flat file item reader. I'm going to represent that reader is used for customer reader. Okay. Now let me specify flat file item reader to read the customer data. So this is my item reader bean. New flat file item reader. New flat file item reader. Now finally, I need to return this item reader object. So this one I will represent as a bean by using @bean method. So this is my configuration class. In that configuration class, I'm writing one method. In that method is returning flat file item reader object, and I'm giving @bean. That means IOC container will call this method at the time of startup. So here I created object for item reader and I'm returning that item reader. Here I need to tell that where is that file available, how to read that file. Okay. So item reader dot set source, nothing but where is that file is available. Okay. Where that file is available? That file is available in a location, new file system resource. That file is available under src main resources customers.csv. Customers.csv file is available. I'm telling that information to my item reader. Item reader dot set resource. This is the file that you need to read. Okay. When you are reading that, we can set a name for that item reader. Item reader dot set name. This is optional. That is customer item reader. Customer item reader. I'm setting the name. When you are reading the data, don't read the first line because it does not contain the actual data. Item reader dot set skip lines. Set lines to skip. How many lines it has to skip? One line it has to skip. Why it has to skip one line? So in the CSV file, the first line contains metadata. Okay, I don't want to read that. That's the reason I'm setting set lines to skip as 1. It is going to skip that. Now the most important thing here is item reader dot line mapper. Set line mapper. What is that line mapper? We need to tell that this is one record. In that record, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 values are available. So this data should be represented as customer ID. This is first name, last name, email, gender, contact number, country, date of birth. When flat file item reader reading the data, it will read one line. In that line, multiple values available, which is ID, which is name, which is date of birth, which is contact number, that we need to specify by using line mapper. Are you guys able to understand? I'm trying to create item reader object. In the item reader, I'm using flat file item reader. That is a predefined class in the Spring Batch. It is used to read the data from the CSV file. So when I'm reading the data from the CSV file, I'm setting the lines to skip. That means skip the first line because it is metadata. Then after that, read every line. Every line will be represented. Every line we need to read from the CSV and that we need to represent as one customer object. In the CSV, data will be available in the comma separated format. So we need to take the data and we need to convert that data into customer object. For that, we are using line mapper. So let me create one method for the line mapper, which will map the data to the customer object. Observe, I'm creating a method. Here I'm calling the method, but that method is not available. Let me create that method. Create a method called line mapper. So here we need to write the logic for line mapping. Okay, every line belongs to one customer record. So default line mapper that I'm taking here, I'm going to take default line mapper. Default line mapper. That line mapper belongs to customer data. Line mapper is equal to new default line mapper. Okay, let me return that line mapper. Let me return that line mapper. So I need to read the data from the line and I need to convert the data into customer object. For that, I need to go for delimiter because comma separated value, every comma is representing one field value, right? So for that, I'm going for delimited. I'm going for delimited line tokenizer. So this is my line tokenizer. This is my line tokenizer, new delimited line tokenizer. So for this line tokenizer, I'm going to specify what is the delimiter. Line tokenizer dot set a delimiter. Delimiter is a comma because it is a CSV file. Based on the comma separated, it has to take the data. Then line tokenizer dot set strict as false value. So if any value is missing, then it should consider that as a space. For that, we are using set strict. Set strict flag we are setting as false. If any value is missing, that should be considered as a null value, or it should consider as a space value. In this tokenizer, what are the fields that it has to take? So line tokenizer dot set names. What are the field names that we are going to get? So there are multiple fields available. ID is the first field. Then we are having first name, and we are having last name, first name and last name that we are having. First name, last name, comma, email is available, gender is available, country is available, contact number is available first, ID, first name, last name, email, gender, contact number, then country. After gender, the data that we are getting, that is contact number data, then country is available, then DOB is available. Country, then we are having DOB. These are the fields that are available. ID, you see here, ID, first name, last name, email, gender. ID, first name, last name, email, gender. Then next one, contact number. Contact number, then we are having country, and we are having DOB. So we are getting this data. I want to set this data to the customer object. For that, we are going to use field mapper. Bean wrapper, field set mapper is available. Whatever the fields data that we are getting from the CSV, set that data to our customer object. Field set mapper. Okay. Field set mapper is equal to new bean wrapper field set mapper object is available. Set the type. Field set mapper dot set type. Okay. So in which class you want to store the data? I want to store the data into customer class. When we are specifying this in our customer class, whatever the variables are available, so those variables should match with the field names that we are giving. Email, gender, contact number, country, date of birth. ID, first name, last name, email, gender, contact number, country, and date of birth. So here we are using line mapper. For that, I'm using delimited line tokenizer. I'm telling that in my CSV file, data will be available as comma separated. That is my delimiter. These are the fields that are available in the CSV. You read the data from the CSV file. Every line will have these values with the comma separated. You set that data into customer object. For that, I'm using another predefined class. Now, let us set line mapper dot set field set mapper. So field set mapper, I'm setting line mapper dot set line tokenizer. So that line tokenizer is also available. Finally, I'm returning my line map. So this is a little tricky when we are writing the code. I'm using flat file item reader. What is the purpose of flat file item reader? Which is used to read the data from the file. When it is reading the data from the file, where is the file available? I'm setting the location. How many lines it has to skip in the starting? I'm setting as 1. And this line mapper, it is used to specify one record will represent one customer data. What values are available in that CSV? What is the delimiter? That the data should be stored into which object? All that logic is available in our line mapper. All right. Once the line mapper is completed, then item processor. With this item reader is completed. With this we completed item reader. Now we need to go for item processor. So I'm not going to do anything in the processor. Just I will create one dummy class. I will create one dummy class customer processor, which will implement item processor. Let me go for new class customer processor. Okay. So this customer processor just implements item processor in the Spring batch. Item processor. Okay. So input is a customer object. Output is also customer object. In that we will have a method called process method. Whatever the item we are getting, I'm returning same item. Here, if you want to process, you can write logic to process data. So this is the input that we are getting, and this is the output that we are getting. Input is a customer, output is also customer. If you want to do any processing, that you can do here in the process, customer processor. So let me specify that as a component. In the batch configuration, I'm going to set up the processor bean. How to set up the processor bean? Public customer processor, that is item processor, customer processor. I'm going to create that object and I will return that object. Customer processor object I'm going to return new customer processor. So inside this customer processor, you can write the logic whatever you want. So you will get one customer object as an input. Suppose, for example, when I am processing these customers, I want to take only Indian people data and I want to insert that data. Then what I can do? If item dot get country dot equals to India, then only I want to process that record. Then only return the item. Okay, guys. So here what will happen? If customer belongs to India, then only return that record. Otherwise, return null value. When I return null value, that means that record will not be inserted. So here, customer processor, if you want to do some filter or anything, that you can do like this. You will get the customer object as the input. If that customer belongs to India, then only process. Otherwise, return the null value. Then what will happen? In the CSV file, the customers which are belongs to India, only those people data will be inserted in the table. Remaining people data will be skipped. So that kind of filters can be done here. Currently, I'm not doing that. I'm just returning whatever the customer object that I'm getting. Return the item. Whatever the item that I'm getting, same item I'm returning. So here I'm configuring this processor. This is also @bean. So item reader is available and item processor is available. Then now we need to go for item writer. What is the purpose of item writer? Item writer is used to write the data to destination. So I want to write the data into database table. For that, in the Spring Batch, there is a predefined class is available, that is repository item writer. Repository item writer is available. I want to write the customer data. So that one I'm specifying customer writer. So let us create the object repository item writer customer. Item writer is equal to new repository item writer. Okay. For this item writer, we need to specify what is our repository, which is used to write the data. Item writer dot set repository and item writer dot set a method. So which method that is used to insert the data, which repository we have to use to insert the data. Return item writer. So let me specify this as a bean so that IOC will call this method. Repository. We are having customer repository. Let us inject that customer repository in our class. Private customer repository. This is used to insert the data into database table. Let me go for auto wiring. This repository I'm giving to item writer. That's it. So this is predefined class repository writer. Guys, here if you observe, for item reader, I have used flat file item reader. It is a predefined class. To write the data, I am going for repository item writer. Predefined classes are available. Flat file item reader is available and repository item writer is available. What is the purpose of flat file item reader? Flat file item reader is a class which is used to read the data from the CSV file. What is the purpose of repository item writer? Repository item writer is used to write the data to the database. By using which repository? By using which method? That information we are setting here. Repository item writer, you take the customer repository. In the customer repository, save method will be available. You take that method to insert the data. Processing will be different from application to application. That's why we created one customer processor according to our requirement. Okay. Processing is not provided by batch because processing, my logic to process, your logic to process will be different. Everybody will have their own logic to process the data. Everybody will have their own logic to process the data. Getting my point? So that is the reason processor that is provided by programmer. Reader, writer classes are predefined. So I configured reader bean, I configured processor bean, I configured writer bean. Then what is the next step, guys? What is the next step now? What is the next step now? Step we need to configure, job we need to configure. So you see here, item reader is available. For the reader, the little confusing part is line mapper. Line mapper is used to process each line available in the CSV file and convert that into customer object. That is the line mapper. Line mapper we are giving to item reader. Then item processor is available. So processing logic will be changing from application to application. So that's why I have taken customer processor. Item writer. So there is a predefined class called repository item writer. For that, I'm setting my repository and I'm setting the repository method. So customer repository. So in the customer repository, extending from JPA repository, there is a predefined method called save method, which is used to insert the record. Then I need to configure step bean and I need to configure job bean. So what is the meaning of step bean? What is the meaning of step bean? Come on, guys. Step bean is used to return step object. That step will represent reader, writer, and processor. Okay. So let me configure the step, public step, Spring Batch Framework step. I'm going to create step. It has to return the step object. Let me specify this as @bean. To return the step, we need step builder factory. So let me take the step builder factory here. Okay. Let me take step builder factory, private. Step builder factory, that is step builder. Similarly, I need job builder factory also to configure the job. Job builder factory to configure the job. AutoBAD. Step builder factory and job builder factory is available. Now let me specify return step builder factory. Return step builder factory. I need to specify the step. For the step, what we need to specify? Step builder factory dot get of step 1. I'm going to configure this as step 1. Then for this step, we are going to specify process the data chunk by chunk. So whenever you are doing the bulk operation, you take 10 records at a time and you process all those 10 records. So here customer data will be available. I want to specify that chunk of 10 records. I want you to process chunk of 10 records. So you can specify 20 also. When I specify chunk 10 records will be processed at a time. So in order to do that processing, what is the reader? I am having customer reader. Call that method. It will give the reader. And what is the processor? Let me call customer processor. Let me call customer processor. And I have writer. So what is the writer here? The writer is customer writer. The customer writer is available. Okay. Then build the step object. So here I'm specifying the step bean. For the step, I'm specifying what is the reader, what is the processor, what is the writer, and I'm specifying the chunk of 10. That means from the CSV, process 10 records in the single shot. 10 records in the single shot. So that is the step object. I'm calling customer reader method. For the reader, it will give flat file item reader. For the processor, I'm calling customer processor method. It will give the customer processor object. Customer processor object. Then I'm calling customer writer object, which will give repository item right. Finally, I'm building step object. So with this, our step is ready. For the step, I have given the reader, processor, and writer. Now I need to create the job. For the job, I need to provide the step object. So let me create the job object. Public job For the job, I need to specify set, that step object. Okay. Return job builder factory we have created already. Job builder factory dot get job name that I am giving. Customer import. You can give any name for that. Customer import. Then what is the flow? Customer import. For the flow, I'm passing the step object. Then once step is completed, then end that, then build. So if you have multiple steps, here you can configure step 1 and dot flow, you can configure step 2. So if you have different steps, you can configure multiple steps, but I'm having only one step. I'm configuring that step here. For that step, I have given already reader, writer, and processor. Let me represent this also as a bean. So this is my job. I'm telling that one step is available. After that step got completed, end the job, then do that. So this is the job configuration. In the job, I configure the step method. In the step method, I have configured reader, processor, and writer. So for that, reader bean available, writer bean available, processor bean is available. This is our Spring batch class. So that batch class we have developed based on this diagram. Okay. Now job launcher is pending. Job is ready. Step is ready. Reader is ready. Writer is ready. Processor is also ready. Are you guys clear? Chunk I have given as 10. What is the meaning of chunk 10? Chunk I have given as 10. What is the meaning of chunk 10? Guys, what is the meaning of chunk 10? 10 records will process at a time. Okay. 10 records will be inserted at a time. Perfect. Now, what is the next step? Create the REST controller. In that REST controller, we are going to write a method to launch the job. Job launcher we are going to configure. Okay. Create one customer REST controller, new class dot REST. We are going to use customer REST controller. So to represent this class as a REST controller, we are going for @REST controller. In this, I'm going to inject the job launcher, private job launcher. What is the purpose of job launcher? It is used to launch the job. Which job it has to launch, that we are going to specify. Job launcher is available. Then inject the job object. Already we have customized the job by using bean, private job, that is auto void. Okay, here I'm writing one method, public void load data. It is a get mapping method, @get mapping /import. So you no need to send the request because already we are using the job launcher, automatically it will launch the job. So in order to launch the job, we are going to pass some parameters for the job when that job is getting started. Job params we can create. Job parameters object is equal to new job parameters builder. New job parameters builder object is available. For that builder object, we are using add long value. So when that batch is getting started, I'm going to specify start at parameter. I'm going to specify system.current milli time seconds. System.current time millis. Current time millis. This one we are going to configure as job parameter to the job parameters. I'm going to pass these values to the job as an input, job parameters. So with this, we are going to write job launcher dot run the job by using job and job parameters. It is giving some exception, throws the exception.
Developer can understand.
Guys, are you clear? Now look at the diagram. Job launcher is available. For the job launcher, I have given the job. For the job, I have given the step. For the step, I have given item reader, item processor, and item writer. Okay. So before going to start this application, let us check, do we have any table in the database? Guys, do we have any table in the database? 0 tables available. Now, let me run my application. Refresh. Run as boot application. I'm trying to run the project, which is having the job launcher enabled. It will run the job. Application is getting started. Guys, still application is getting started. Yeah, that is the Lombok issue, leave that issue. Now see, the tables are getting created. Now can you see, guys, the insert queries? So job launcher is started the job and it has inserted the data. Simple job configuration, step executed in 5 seconds. So how much time it took to load the data into database? See the tables. See the tables. So how many tables are created in the database? How many tables are created in the database? Guys, is it only customer table or other tables also created? Customer info table is available. So now you see how many tables that are created in the database. How many tables that are created in the database? Several tables got created. They will maintain the batch details. Customer info. Let us go for customer info. Select a star from customer info. Now look at this table. See, all the customer records are inserted. All the customer records are inserted in the database table. How many customers are there? there are 1,000 customers are available. So all the 1,000 customer records are inserted into database table. All the 1,000 customer records are inserted into database table. Are we able to execute batch application? Yes, we are able to execute the batch application. See the tables that are available. See the tables that are available. Job execution details, batch job execution, select a star from batch job execution. So many tables got created. They will maintain our batch execution details. Now, job execution ID 1, create time, start time, end time, right? Status is completed, exit code, last updated. The complete batch execution details, it is maintained. The complete batch execution details, it is maintained. Are you guys clear with my point? Yes, our batch got executed. So look at the diagram. All right, guys, good. Job launcher is available. Job launcher that is responsible to launch the job. So if you observe here, in our application, job launcher is available. That job launcher is going to launch the job. Which job it has to launch? Already we have injected the job object. That job object we are customizing in the configuration class. This job will be injected into our REST controller. Job launcher.run of the job. To run this job, we are passing the job parameters. So the parameters I'm giving that when that batch job is started, that start time I'm giving as input for the job. Job launcher.run job with job parameters. Okay. So when this job is executed, in that job we have configured the flow as a step. In that job we are configuring the flow as a step. So here for the job we are giving the step as the input. In one job we can configure multiple steps also. So the step will represent who is the reader, who is the processor, who is the writer, and how many records we need to process in the single shot. We are giving chunk of 10. That means 10 records should be processed at a time. So reader, that is a customer reader, processor, customer processor, writer, customer writer. So who is reader to read the data? Who is a processor to process the data? Who is writer to write the data? So that reader object, processor object, item, writer object, we are giving for the step and we are giving the chunk of 10. That means the 10 records I need to process at a time. And then here we configure the writer. Writer is a predefined class, repository item writer. Processor is our class. There is no logic. You can write the logic to process that. Then reader is available. Here we are using flat file item reader, which is used to read the data. Okay. For the flat file item reader, I'm giving which lines it has to skip and how to map that CSV data to the customer object. So CSV data that will be available as a comma separated value. That is a comma separated value. And we are setting that what are the values we are getting from the CSV, map those values to the customer object. For that field set mapper class I am using. So line mapper, for line mapper, I'm setting the tokenizer and I'm setting the field mapper. Then each line will be converted to customer object. That line data will be represented in the customer object. That customer object we are inserting in the database by using save method, which is available in the repository. Method name and repository we are setting for the repository item writer. Now here our operation is reading the data from the CSV, writing for the database. Suppose if I do the reverse operation, my data is available in the database. I want to read the data from the database. I want to create the CSV. Then repository item reader we are going to use. Here flat file item reader we are using to read the data from the file. Suppose if I have a reverse requirement, my data is available in the database table. My data is available in the database table. Read the data from the database table and store into CSV file. Can you guys do that as a task? By using Spring Batch. So take one table, take 100 records in the table, or else this example only, already you executed the job. The records are inserted to table, 1000 records available. Now I want you to create another application which will read the data from the table, which will write to the CSV file, the reverse operation. Can you do that by using Spring Batch? Can you do that by using Spring Batch? I want you to develop a Spring Batch application which will read the data from the database table, which will write to the CSV file. I have done CSV to DB. I want you to do DB to CSV. That is a requirement. So here we are using flat file reader. Now for the new requirement, what you need to use? Flat file writer. Here we are using repository writer. For the new requirement, repository reader. So it depends upon the requirement. I want you to develop one more application. That application should read the data from the table, should write to the CSV file by using Spring Batch. So Spring Batch, what is this Spring Batch? Spring Batch is a framework. It is used to perform bulk operation. Spring Batch is used to perform bulk operation. Batch framework is designed to develop robust batch applications. Using Spring Batch, we can process millions of records in fraction of seconds. So we have seen here, within 5 seconds, our batch processes 1000 records. So in the real time, when you want to deal with the bulk operations, then Spring Batch is the recommended approach. Good. Fine, guys. So with this, we understood what is Spring Batch. The code for the Spring Batch, I already gave in the GitHub repository. I will upload these notes. So in my GitHub repository, the same application is available. You people can take the code from there. Right. Spring Batch concept, which is a lightweight framework to develop robust batch applications. So Spring Batch terminology and batch example is available. I want you to do the assignment task. The task, read the data from the database table and store into CSV file using Spring Batch. Read data from DB table and store into CSV file using Spring Batch. So this is the task I want you people to try. I explained how to read the data from CSV and store into database. Now I want you to do the reverse requirement. Read the data from the DB and store into CSV file using Spring Batch. Good. Fine, guys. Good. Thank you. I'm going to upload these notes. With this, I'm stopping for today. We'll meet in the tomorrow session. Thank you, guys.